Hi everyone, my name is Ashley Pratt, and today I will be discussing artificially intelligent proctoring software and its uses within an online higher education setting. So, automated proctoring software, specifically for exams, has really expanded within online higher education courses due to the COVID-19 pandemic. And this trend generates debate as concerns of student privacy and surveillance technology have been raised. And proponents of using the software believe it helps level the academic playing field and expands offerings by higher education institutions. So, the main issue is should online higher education courses utilize artificially intelligent proctoring software for student exams? And this really stems because academic integrity was being questioned because so many courses and students were suddenly shifted online. So there was no way to really know if our students were engaging in their academic studies honestly. So before we get into the meat of the issue, I think it's important to position myself within the context of this issue. So I have been an online instructional designer and course builder for over 10 years. I transitioned my employer's courses during the initial COVID change. So it was all of their programs, all of their courses were now suddenly online. And I have also sat on multiple software purchasing committees, which evaluated the use of software purchases for our college. Uh, and with it, I was part of the decision making team. And just as an aside, I'm also a fully online student and have for two of my degrees. So, as far as the overview and assumptions, we know education was fundamentally changed due to COVID. Classes were shifted online, and with that came the concern that student level work was eh, questionable. So, universities implemented proctoring softwares for assignments and exams. But when we really think about it, proctored exams are not new. We used to have computer labs with dedicated staff that would be set up on an individual campus to facilitate exams. So students were still being monitored, or we would do in class exams where our professor would monitor us. But proctoring does alleviate and support a university's goal of growth because when applied online, we don't have to have an entire class on a Zoom call with an instructor monitoring. We can have students log into the proctoring system, and the AI or human proctor will proctor for us, freeing up the faculty and the teaching assistant. So it's a good way to scale. However, with this thinking, we assume that students are going to cheat. So it's really an issue of ethics and intent because we are designing our courses and going into the course like with the assumption that our students are going to cheat. So in order to prevent cheating, we need to employ a proctor of some sort. And we also are assuming that technology access is equitable because in order to utilize these proctoring systems, students have to have a fairly robust computer in order to get the software to work properly. Primary arguments for the use of online proctoring solutions center on minimizing student cheating on exams. So those proponents state that it prevents or deters students from cheating. It will level the playing field for the exam because they can be taken anywhere in the world. They uphold academic integrity whenever a proctor is employed. And then because it is artificially intelligent, it can scale. So we could use it in massive open online courses where thousands of students can be enrolled. Those on the side opposing the use of artificially intelligent proctoring solutions realize that it's set up under the assumption that we are evaluating students who we know or assume will cheat. So the intent behind evaluation is changed. Additionally, it raises pedagogical concerns because exams are no longer designed to assess learning. Assessing learning is secondary to the fact that our students are presumed to be cheating. We also have the issue that the lockdown nature of the proctoring solution controls a student's computer or device. And then if a webcam is employed, it also looks into a student's home or wherever the student may be, leading to concerns of privacy. And lastly, the software, because it is software, will and may flag reports of inappropriate behavior that stem from bias, such as racial bias or disability bias. When looking at the arguments, we know automation and the use of artificial intelligence is not inherently wrong. We use automated grading whenever we post our exams to our learning management system and the computer grades our questions. We can even think of Scantrons as a level of automation that also graded our assessments. The issue stems when suddenly every exam requires the use of a proctor. And it's under the assumption that our students are going to cheat. Because again, the intent behind the assessment is no longer to evaluate knowledge, it's to prevent cheating. And we can assume that students are going to cheat because higher education is high stakes. It doesn't matter if they're in a face-to-face classroom or an online classroom. Assessments in higher education lead to your GPA, they lead to continuing to a program or getting a job in the future. They lead to bigger goals students have. So every assignment, every exam that a student takes whenever they are in college will feel high stakes for that student. Therefore, they're going to try anything they can in order to help secure their future. And while faculty may turn a blind eye to cheating, that motive is still there. And the artificially intelligent proctoring solutions capitalize on this student need to provide for themselves in their future. Another point is humans, we are flawed, we are biased. And because we are programming the software, our bias shows. There were two studies that showed that artificially intelligent proctoring solutions flagged more issues of quote unquote uh, suspicious behavior, especially when it came to brown and black females who were older, leading to this idea that our racial biases are showing, like, in the software, because the software is going to examine whatever a software is trained to examine. And then this also leads to uh, ability bias, because students who may be like on the autism spectrum or on the ADHD spectrum, they may stim, they may fidget, they may look around, and these are things they cannot control, but things that would flag the AI system. And so this inequity and bias becomes an issue because there's no stopgap aside from maybe a human analyzing the recording afterwards. But for a student who is already in a very high stakes environment to now come in and be flagged for something they cannot control doesn't sit right. And then additionally, their AI proctoring is still relatively new. And with that, there is a lack of oversight as far as what companies are doing with with their recordings, with their analysis, and that leads to concerns for privacy. So when it comes to values emphasized and compromised, proctoring solutions mean well. In an ideal world, they would promote excellence, efficiency, and equity. But in order to strive for excellence, so academic engagement and integrity, the artificially intelligent proctoring solutions hinder a student's equity and liberty because of the capital necessary to fit the criteria for unbiased proctoring. And then in order to promote efficiency, the, the software identifies potential issues of cheating, but because the software is biased, because we as humans who program the software are biased, we disproportionately affect students' liberty and access to education if they are continuously being flagged for engaging in quote unquote suspicious behavior. So, as far as my personal position, I'm against the use of proctoring when it's incorporated into assessments. I think it has merit when it's purposeful. So, things like an, a licensing exam, in which case you are designing the course around the fact that you know you are consenting into taking this licensing exam in the future. So all the times you engage with proctoring, it's to prepare you for that test taking environment. And really, my issue with proctoring stems from consent. Like, I understand that there are times where proctoring is necessary, but we don't really give students a choice to opt in or out of the use of proctoring. And so it promotes a power imbalance between the student and the academic institution. A more equitable system would have students assessed on their merits, which can be done without proctoring, and would imply that students are consenting into that system. And then my other reason for being against its use is that there's just more oversight and regulations that need to be established, because we are operating under the use that the software are going to do no wrong and they have our best intentions at heart. But just because we consented to a proctored exam when we were an undergrad doesn't mean that that consent should last for the rest of our lives. And what these companies are doing with, like, the analysis of our rooms and of our faces and our IDs, we don't know. We don't know what they will do with that information in the future. And that is scary. So, how do we solve this problem? I think for me, the big issue stems and can be fixed by having intentional course design. So, we need to examine the purpose behind our assessments, and we need to allow for student choice and consent into the proctored environment. We need to equip students with all of the information. So, what type of technology they're going to use or need. Ideally, we would give them options where if they don't want to take a proctored exam or they don't have the technology necessary to take a proctored exam, then we could still assess them in another way, maybe a more authentic way that doesn't require proctoring. And by doing that, we enable students to have autonomy because now they are in charge of their learning. It would deter them from cheating when they got to choose what it is they wanted to do in order to be assessed for a course. So we have to go back and really examine what it is we're doing in our courses and how that's leading or promoting to this high stakes environment, which then causes students to cheat, which would then spur us to want to implement these artificially intelligent proctoring solutions.